Callum Boyd was once just another forgotten boy from the grey streets of Falkirk, but within a decade, his name would become feared across Scotland, whispered in alleyways and police briefings as the mastermind behind the country's most sophisticated criminal empire. From invisible orphan to the orchestrator of a £5.3 million heist, Callum's rise wasn't fueled by rage or revenge. It was built on silence, strategy, and a chilling disregard for consequence. His fall, however, would be just as calculated. Callum Boyd was born in the grey shadows of Falkirk, a town that never quite found its place between Scotland's industrial past and its uncertain future. His childhood was marked by silence, no birthdays, no bedtime stories, just the echo of arguments and the sting of cold dinners. His mother vanished before he turned 5, and his father, a broken man with a broken bottle always in hand, was in and out of prison. By the time Callum turned 10, he had already been passed through 3 foster homes. No one wanted the boy with the distant stare and clenched fists that the system labeled him high risk, emotionally detached, and likely to offend. But the reports never mentioned his memory, sharp as glass, or how he studied everything around him, the way locks clicked, the schedules of neighbors, how adults ignored kids like him. School was nothing more than a waiting room between punishments. He didn't speak unless necessary and rarely made eye contact. What few friendships he formed were based on shared survival, stealing lunch money, skipping class, hiding from truant officers. But Callum wasn't aimless, he was learning. While others acted out in bursts of violence, he watched and absorbed. By 13, he could pick a padlock in under 10 seconds. He started breaking into sheds and garages, never houses, never places with people. That came later. At 14, he was arrested for stealing a neighbor's car, driving it for 3 miles before abandoning it behind a scrapyard. Police couldn't believe a boy his age had pulled it off so cleanly. He didn't flinch during questioning. He simply waited, calculating. Released into yet another group home, Callum used the time to make connections. He met older boys with records and reputations, boys who talked big and fought hard. He wasn't the strongest, but he was the smartest, and they followed him. Soon, the crimes escalated. Shoplifting became burglary, truancy became trespassing, and joyrides became targeted thefts. He mapped streets, timed alarms, studied CCTV angles, and trained others to do the same. While most teens were playing video games or sneaking into pubs, Callum was planning operations. He turned his room into a miniature war room, using stolen phones and burner accounts to coordinate movement and sales. Police started recognizing a pattern, but couldn't trace it to him. He never left fingerprints. He never used the same method twice. Each crime was a signature carefully designed to appear chaotic, but executed with chilling precision. What set Callum apart wasn't his cruelty. It was his detachment. He didn't take pleasure in hurting people. He simply didn't care. He wasn't angry at the world. He had just decided it owed him something. In his mind, rules were obstacles and morality was a luxury for people with families and futures. He had neither. Falkirk bred many criminals, but Callum Boyd was different. Even then, those who knew him sensed he was headed somewhere darker. They just never imagined how far he'd go. Callum Boyd disappeared from Falkirk's watchful eyes in his early 20s. To most, it seemed like he had either been arrested or simply faded away like so many other troubled youths. But in truth, He was laying the foundations of something far bigger than anyone imagined. He stopped drawing attention to himself. Number. More joyrides, no petty theft. Instead, he began recruiting. Not just anyone. He picked people who were desperate, invisible, and willing to follow. They were addicts, runaways, low-level dealers, people with nothing to lose and everything to gain from a little direction. Callum didn't just use them. He trained them. Every person had a role, and no one ever saw the full picture. He started by offering protection to small-time dealers across Falkirk and Stirling. In exchange, they gave him a cut of their profits and access to their contacts. He provided them with better routes, safer drop points, and, when needed, legal help through a shady solicitor he'd managed to blackmail. Before long, he wasn't just part of the drug trade, he was managing it. Rival dealers either disappeared or fell in line. Some went missing entirely, their names whispered in alleyways like ghost stories with money flowing in. Callum expanded into counterfeit goods, luxury clothing, electronics, even fake passports. He sourced items from Eastern Europe through encrypted channels and sold them through street-level vendors across central Scotland. By 25, he had warehouses filled with merchandise and a network that stretched from Glasgow to Dundee. But he never appeared in person. Orders were relayed through phones, apps, or intermediaries who didn't even know his real name. He moved like smoke, and his name became a rumor more than a person. Police started noticing patterns. The sudden rise in coordinated burglaries, van thefts that never made the news, and drug routes that remained untouched for months at a time. Intelligence reports began linking operations to a mysterious figure nicknamed the Architect for the strategic precision behind the crimes. But there were no fingerprints, no CCTV images, no informants willing to speak. Even those closest to Callum knew better than to ask too many questions. He rewarded loyalty, but punished betrayal with terrifying efficiency. A local dealer who once skimmed profits was found in a ditch outside Cumbernauld. No one ever mentioned his name again. Callum reinvested everything, not in property or cars, but in silence. He paid off night watchmen, dock workers, storage unit owners, and even a few corrupt constables. He bought firewalls, burner phones in bulk, and secure lines no one could tap. He operated in layers. No one person knew more than they needed. 2. His genius wasn't just in avoiding capture, but in creating a system that could run without him being physically present. And it worked. Falkirk was no longer his hometown. It was his headquarters. He didn't just rule the streets. He owned the shadows. And while the public went about their lives, unaware of the machine moving beneath them, Callum Boyd tightened his grip. Scotland didn't know it yet, but it had already lost control. In 2012, a quiet spring night in Stirling shattered Scotland's sense of security. A high-security cash depot on the outskirts of the city, guarded around the clock and protected by multiple layers of surveillance, was breached. By morning, £5.3 million was gone. No alarms were triggered. The night shift security guards were found unconscious in the break room, showing no signs of violence. Initial reports suggested a gas leak or food poisoning, but toxicology revealed traces of an exotic sedative rarely seen in the UK. It was precise, undetectable in routine tests, and fast-acting. Whoever had done this had done it before, or had spent years preparing for it. The high stunned the country. News outlets rushed to cover it. Experts compared it to scenes from a Hollywood movie. There were no signs of forced entry. The CCTV footage from the depot and surrounding buildings was wiped clean, as if someone had never just broken in, but broken through the very concept of security. Police scrambled to piece together any leads, but everything they found led nowhere. The vault door showed no tampering. The cash crates were wheeled out with calculated ease. Whoever did this knew the depot inside and out. In the weeks that followed, theories multiplied. An inside job? Military involvement? Foreign operatives? But within law enforcement circles, one name began to circulate quietly: Callum Boyd. Although never formally connected to any violent or high-level crimes, Boyd's name had shown up repeatedly in surveillance reports and criminal intelligence files. He was always nearby, never involved, and always too careful. There were whispers of a shadowy figure building a criminal empire in central Scotland, and now, with a heist of this scale, it seemed the whispers were real. Still, there was no proof. Boyd's name was never mentioned in the press. There were no photos, no traceable bank activity, no witness accounts. He didn't flaunt the money. He didn't suddenly buy cars or property. Instead, he vanished. For nearly a year, there were no sightings, no movement. Investigators monitored his known associates, tapped phones, and launched undercover operations. But they found only silence. The people around him were loyal or terrified, or both. Behind the scenes, however, Boyd was far from idle. The stolen cash was moved in small amounts through shell companies in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. He used low-level couriers who didn't know what they were carrying. Luxury goods were purchased overseas and resold under fake identities. He expanded operations internationally, using the stolen fortune not just to grow his empire, but to protect it. Every transaction was layered in digital obfuscation. He left no trace because he never touched the money directly. Scotland's largest cash robbery remained unsolved. The public moved on, assuming the culprits had been professionals from outside the country. But the truth was far more chilling. The mastermind hadn't come from abroad. He had grown up just down the road, unnoticed, overlooked, and now untouchable. Callum Boyd had pulled off the perfect crime, and for a moment, it seemed like he had won. After the heist, Callum Boyd became a ghost. No paper trail, no online activity, and no sightings. To the world, it was as if he had vanished into thin air. But behind layers of false identities and forged documents, he was more active than ever. He left Scotland quietly, using a stolen passport to enter Spain. From there, he moved through Portugal, Cyprus, and the Balkans, establishing a chain of safe houses and overseas contacts. He avoided flashy cities and crowded places, preferring quiet coastal towns where no one asked questions. His face changed to beard grown, hair dyed, weight gained. Surveillance photos from earlier years were now useless. He didn't just hide, he built again. The stolen millions were laundered through foreign shell companies and cryptocurrency exchanges. Callum invested in offshore properties, luxury apartments registered under fake names, and businesses that existed only on paper. His reach stretched far beyond Scotland now. He bought silence in every country he entered airport. Workers, bank employees, lawyers. Everyone had a price, and he knew exactly how to find it. By 2014, Callum Boyd was no longer a local crime boss. He was an international fugitive living in quiet luxury, untouchable and invisible. Back in Scotland, the police remained at a dead end, leads dried up, and new cases pushed the heist further down the list. Public attention faded. Only a handful of investigators stayed committed to the theory that Boyd was behind it all. They tracked financial movements, conducted background checks on luxury property owners, and flagged any large cash purchases across Europe. But Boyd never made mistakes, not the kind that left evidence. He used middlemen for every transaction, made sure his couriers didn't know his name, and rotated between safe locations frequently. Even his closest associates didn't know where he was at any given time. But as always, arrogance became his weakness. In 2015, he chartered a private jet from a small airfield in southern Portugal. He had used the same airfield twice before without incident. This time, something changed. A junior customs official noticed something odd about the passport. It was genuine in appearance, but belonged to a man who had died 6 years earlier. The official ran the details through an updated international database and found a red flag. Within hours, Interpol agents surrounded the airstrip. Boyd didn't resist arrest. He remained calm, silent, and cooperative, refusing to answer any questions. He knew that without physical evidence, a passport issue wouldn't be enough to connect him to anything bigger. But when authorities raided his villa in Lisbon, they found encrypted hard drives, stacks of foreign currency, false IDs, and security files containing names and bank accounts. The encryption was tough, but not impenetrable. It took months, but when investigators finally broke into the drives, they uncovered detailed records, shipping logs, heist blueprints, and money transfers. It was the missing puzzle piece. Callum Boyd was no longer just a suspect. He was now the central figure in one of the most extensive criminal investigations in modern Scottish history. His downfall had begun not through betrayal or violence, but through the tiniest error in an otherwise perfect game. Callum Boyd's arrest sent ripples through Scotland's criminal underworld. For years, he had been a ghost whispered about but never seen, feared but never proven. Now, his name was front-page news, his face plastered across newspapers and nightly broadcasts. The man once believed to be untouchable was now in a cell, facing charges that spanned countries and crossed legal jurisdictions. As the investigation deepened, the scale of his criminal empire shocked even the most seasoned detectives. Financial records, coded messages, fake passports, and hidden assets told a story of a man who had built an empire on silence, precision, and fear. The trial was set in Edinburgh's High Court and quickly became the most watched in recent memory. The prosecution presented hundreds of documents and witness testimonies. Callum sat motionless through it all, eyes cold, expression unreadable. He didn't speak unless spoken to and showed no sign of emotion as former associates took the stand. One after another, they described a man who was both brilliant and terrifying, who rewarded loyalty but destroyed betrayal. Some said they feared for their lives even while testifying, convinced Boyd still had people on the outside. The court heard about bribed officials, encrypted communications, secret bank accounts, and operations so complex they resembled intelligence agency tactics. What shocked the public most wasn't just the money or the violence, but how methodically Boyd had manipulated those around him. He had used teenagers as lookouts, addicts as decoys, and ex-soldiers as enforcers. He had paid for their silence with cash, threats, and, in some cases, lethal consequences. The Stirling Depot heist, which had gone unsolved for years, was revealed. in full detail during the trial. Plans had been drawn up over 2 years, with precise schematics of the building, staff routines, and security protocols. The drug used to incapacitate the guards had been sourced from a contact in Moldova, tested beforehand in small doses to perfect the effect. It wasn't just a robbery. It was a military-grade operation executed by criminals pretending to be street-level thugs. Despite his defense team's best efforts, the evidence was overwhelming. Boyd was convicted on multiple charges: conspiracy to commit robbery, money laundering, possession of false documents, and directing a criminal organization. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for at least 35 years. But even as the sentence was read, Callum remained expressionless, as if it meant nothing. Some believed he had already prepared for this moment, that he had planned for his own capture as part of a larger scheme. 2 weeks after the trial, during a routine inspection at the prison, a hidden USB drive was discovered in the cell of a guard who had been visiting Boyd frequently. The contents of the drive stunned authorities: encrypted files containing GPS coordinates, access codes, and references to unknown offshore accounts. Investigators believe tens of millions remain hidden across Europe, untouched and untraceable. To this day, none of it has been recovered. Callum Boyd has never spoken a word about it. He sits in silence, locked away, his secrets buried deeper than his fortune. And in some corners of Scotland, people still believe the game isn't over.